I did a couple months ago.
What name? حمزة عبد الله ما شاء الله ما شاء الله جعل الله كالحمزة عبد المطلب إن شاء الله. السلام عليكم. I'm usually here at 5:30. I'm a little bit late today. Actually, my students are thinking he's late all the time. Which is not good. Punctuality is very important in Islam. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Now, the thing is, we're normally reading the Shama'il, which is a book about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And, you know, when I accepted Islam, my real interest was in this idea of God being one. That really captured my mind. You know, growing up, believing in a triune God, God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit, this complete unicity, like this complete oneness of God, it really kind of like spoke to my heart and really satisfied the object of like my search. Like that's what I was looking for. This second part of that Muslim testimony of faith, Muhammad is the messenger of God, I just kind of accepted that like, oh yeah, I guess, you know, like, okay, I guess you have to accept that too. And it was many years into my Islam that I started learning that the second part of that testimony of faith is very important as well. You know, taking the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as a living example of how to be the best people that we can be, the best men that we can be, the best women that we can be, as a model for what our devotion to God should look like, as a model for how we should be husbands, wives, fathers, mothers, neighbors, colleagues, in positions of leadership or subject to someone else's leadership, in positions of power or in positions where we are disempowered. You know, so we were doing in this session, and I forgot the book today, you know but we were doing in this session the Shama'il Muhammadiyah, or a book about the Prophet's characteristics, about his life, about his teachings. We are, some people in this class, like Sister Sonia, is wearing yellow here, from the beginning of the class have been attending. We're now at like Hadith 270. So like different, like 270 separate traditions about the Prophet Muhammad, and going through them one by one, looking at each one. So that's what we're doing in this class. Whenever only a few people come, or I forget the book like I did today, we leave the floor completely open for anybody who wants to ask about anything. So the floor is open today. If you have any questions about anything, or if anybody else has any questions about anything, you know, the floor is open. MashaAllah. Assalamu alaikum. MashaAllah. It's good. How have you been, man? MashaAllah. Good to see you, man. Alhamdulillah. So yeah, the floor is open, man. The floor is open. If anybody has anything that they would like to address. Yes, Iman.
So a couple of classes ago, we talked about sleep. And then we also talked about like when you die, it's similar to something like make sense of time. So I was thinking about that, and I was also thinking about how for me there's always been an emphasis, just like growing up and learning about Islam. And how like the time that you spend there really it's like I guess I was kind of like stuck with that, because I'm like, does that mean that time in the grave goes really quickly between when you die and the day of judgment, or is it that when it's done, it kind of feels like no time has passed?
Very good question. You know, one of the most, I think, profound ideas contained in the Quran, and this predates like Einstein's theory of relativity, is like that time is relative. You know, God mentions days that are like 1,000 years of your reckoning, right? So time, you know, time is not as concrete as we think about time. So you will find descriptions of the day of judgment, our final reckoning, that it will feel, just that moment of judgment will feel like an eternity. Doesn't mean that it will be an eternity, but you know, our perception of time is shaped by how we are experiencing everything around us. And we even experience some of that in this life. If you talk to someone that experienced a very tense moment, like maybe, I don't know, drowning, they will tell you, man, it felt like an eternity. Like my rescue couldn't come quick enough. Now, if you look at the total time they were drowning, it might have been 45 seconds. But you couldn't tell them it was only 45 seconds. I mean, it felt like, because I didn't know when it was going to come to an end. I didn't know if it would come to an end, right? So even life itself, I mean, this is one of those big ideas in the Quran, right? God says, when you ask them, how long were you on earth? They will say, what, yawman aw ba'da yawm? Maybe they lived a life of 90 years. They will say it was like a day or part of a day. Because looking at eternity, it will make life feel like that. It will make life feel like it was just like that, right? Because the experience of eternity is something like the Arabs, they say, al-wasfu la yablughu kunhaha. Like describing it will never really capture its essence. Some people say that as creatures, the one thing we're incapable of really grasping is eternity, like forever. We're temporal creatures, right? To think forever. But suffice it to say, forever makes everything else seem quick. Even a million years, forever makes anything seem very, very quick. So the time that we spend in the grave, what the Messenger of Allah mentioned, peace be upon him, is that when a person dies, the day of judgment is established. And he likened it to sleep. Even if you sleep 10 hours, it doesn't feel like 10 hours. It feels like what? You went to sleep and you woke up. So even if a person died 100,000 years ago, right? If somebody died, 100,000 years ago, the time they spend in their grave is not going to feel like 100,000 years. No one is in their grave saying, man, look, I don't care if I'm going up or down. I'm just trying to get out of here. No, when you die, you will have an experience that will be a phenomenological experience, meaning of pain, of ihsas, in the grave, or pleasure, right? It will either be a rawda min riyad al-jannah, your grave will be like an orchard from the orchards of paradise, or it will be like a chamber of the hellfire, right? So you will have a preview of, what your experience is going to be in the next life, right? Now, what's interesting about this? Assalamu alaikum, mashallah, jitta mubakkiran al-yawm. Mashallah, alhamdulillah. Now, what's deep about it is they say that even though the righteous will get a preview of their experience in the hereafter, in the akhirah, when they're raised from their graves and they see all of the sights of the day of judgment, they're going to forget all about what they're still going to be perspiring. They're still going to be worried. Nobody's going to say, man, this would be scary, but I already saw my place in heaven in the grave. I'm good. They're still going to be terrified. They're still going to be worried. there are some things you can't really prepare for them. You know, it's almost like, yeah, the best way that I can explain it, and this is like for me, the most significant part of the analogy between sleep and death is that both of them overtake you before you realize it. See, none of us chooses to go to sleep and just say, and sleep. No, it doesn't happen like that. You're lying in bed, you're looking, and what? Before you know it, you're waking up. You're lying in bed, and it's like you fall asleep, right? Sometimes it's very intentional. Like you close your eyes and you open your window, you set the conditions of the room, but you never know the precise moment that you fall asleep. You don't choose to say, okay, and I'm out. I don't know, do any of you do that? No. Sleep overtakes you, and that's how death is. Death overtakes you. Nobody says, and die. No, it overtakes you before you realize it. Before you realize it, you've been overtaken by death, right? And it's that kind of experience. In fact, if I'm being honest with you, my experience with sleep is one of the things that gives me some comfort when thinking about death, right? Now, of course, we live between hope and fear, but in terms of how it happens, I imagine it happening like when I fall asleep. I was like, and before I know it, I'm asleep, right? I'm dreaming. The only thing with death, before you know it, the angel of death is taking the soul. And it's mentioned that when a person dies, they know right away, I'm not just asleep this time. I'm not just dreaming this time. It's over. It's over. Okay? It's over. And, Imam Ghazali, he mentioned, this is something that really, kind of shakes you up. He said, if you kick a corpse, the corpse doesn't feel anything because the soul is not present in the body. The soul doesn't experience it. He said, so our experience of pain or discomfort is because of the presence of our souls. He said, what do you think about the pain or discomfort of something that afflicts the soul directly? Right? The only reason the body can feel pain is because the soul is present, right? The angel of death takes the soul. And it's mentioned that when he takes the soul of the unrighteous and the wicked, it's a horrifying experience for them. And the souls of the righteous are drawn out just like water is drawn from a cup with a straw. Comes out with ease. And everything in the experience of the righteous is comforting them. The angels appear to them fragrant and beautiful, and they're calming them. Don't worry, salamun alaikum, salamun alaikum, salamun alaikum. Because it would be horrifying. Everything is done with ease. They say the souls of the righteous are handled like precious jewels. Right? But the soul, I'm giving up my age here, but have any of you seen the movie Ghost? Whoopi Goldberg, Patrick Swayze, See, it's old, right? But in Ghost, a soul is being taken and the soul doesn't want to go. So it's a very violent, no. And it's like the soul is being yanked out of there, right? So the time that we spend in the grave, no matter how long it actually is between when a person dies and when the day of judgment occurs, it will feel just like a short time, just a short time, right? Which is really scary. Meaning like there is no separation between the time you die and the day of judgment. Whenever you die, the day of judgment will be soon after that, whenever you die, right? Just like whenever you fall asleep, you wake up soon after that. Even if you sleep 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, 10 hours, it seems like what? I went to sleep, I woke up. Right? So the analogy, the connection between death and sleep, very, very deep. And if you look at a person sleeping and they're sleeping perfectly still, they could be dead. Like you couldn't really, other than the fact that they're breathing, of course. But in terms of their lack of perception of what's around them. A person in like REM sleep, it could be, it's very, very similar to being dead, right? The thing that really like is like, now I'm getting into my own kind of morbid fascinations here. When somebody is asleep and you lift their eyelids up, it's not like they say, yeah, I can see you. It's like, no, they're still asleep, right? It's not that they're in a state of sleep. The soul is not there. You can lift the eyelids up and look right at the whites of their eyes. They're not there, right? And death is very similar to that, you know. May God give us good endings. Yes, Sonia.
For people who may have like a prayer area, is there any guidance how that like generally and specifically like is there anything regarding the alignment of the direction, the direction,
You know, it's actually a sign of the Ahlullah, the people of God, that they have designated areas in their homes for prayer. You know, that they have a place, they have, you know, what used to be called a mihrab. You guys want to hear something like really cool about the word mihrab? Now, the word mihrab in Arabic, it refers to that little arch. You know, if you go into a mosque and you look toward the front where the guy is leading the prayer, there's like a little arch thing that he's usually standing in. Where? Oh, right there. That little thing right there. See that? A great visual aid. That is called a mihrab. A mihrab. Now, the word mihrab is an ismul ala. You know, the Arabic language is very cool. And I would recommend every new Muslim to learn Arabic, and every old Muslim to learn Arabic. Arabic language is very, very cool. It's a very cool language. In Arabic, Arabic is a language of trilateral roots, mostly. So like fataha. The word fataha means to open something. The ismul ala is the noun of the tool of that thing. So miftah is a key. You see, miftah is a key. La'iqa is to lick. La'iqa. Mil'aqa is a spoon. Because you use it for licking. Mil'aqa is a spoon. If you don't believe me, he's Arab. He knows what I'm talking about. Right? Right. But he probably never thought about that because when you know a language now, you don't think. See, I learned Arabic as a second language, so all of these details are very important to me, right? The word mihrab actually means the ismul ala of harb, of war. The word for war in Arabic is harb, war. What do you think the connection between that thing is, that arch that we pray under, and war? Harb, mihrab. That is the place that you do war against yourself, against your nafs. That's what Raghib al-Isfahani said that is the place that we have to go to war with our nafs. And then he said, the only way you can be at peace with other people is if you are at war with your own ego. But if you are at peace with your own ego, you will be at war with everybody else, right? And that's when they say that 10 people on a path of self-purification can live together in a house and they can all get along, man. But for 2 tyrants, the world is not big enough. They couldn't share the entire dunya is not big enough for me and you, right? Right now, Russia is huge. It's not enough for Putin. I need more. I need more. Right? I need more. Right? You have to be at war with your ego to be at peace, right? With everybody else. Now, it is actually a sign of the people of prayer that they have areas in their homes that are like their personal maharib, like their personal mihrabs, right? When Zachariah was teaching Mary, right? Great story of prayer in the Quran. The Quran mentions that she was placed in his what? In his mihrab. But the deep indication that he had a mihrab of his own, right? And then he would come to feed her because, their devotions were very long. I mean, we don't realize the mercy that God has had on the ummah. We can pray and it's like 5 minutes. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 7, 8 minutes. We pray and then we're done. Like the people of the past, their devotions went on for hours. Hours they would be in devotion, right? So Maryam, may God grant her peace, Mary, our mother, she would be in devotion for hours. And Zechariah would come to bring her food and he would find that she already had food. And he would say, Ya Maryam, anna laki hada. Like, where did you get this food? And she would say, from Allah. Allah, God. God gives whatever he wants to whomever he wants, بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. Right? يَرْزُقُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. God gives whatever he wants to whomever he wants with no hisab. And so then Zachariah started thinking, if God can give fruits that are out of season, that's the tafsir. Mary had fruits that were out of season. Like, how did you get that? He started thinking, I'm out of season. I'm past the age of being able to produce children. But if God can give anything he wants to anyone he wants, maybe he can give me kids. And he started praying for children. And then God sent angels to him that said, as he was praying in his mihrab, it mentions in the Quran that he was standing in his mihrab, angels came to him and they told him, you're going to have a son. His name will be Yahya. His name will be John the Baptist. Right? So my point in mentioning all of this, right? These are just some of the stories that involve the personal prayers of people, prayers that weren't at temples. Like this, all of this activity was happening around the personal prayer area of Zachariah. He had that in his home. This is where he used to perform his devotions, right? So it's good to have a place that we designate for prayer. And sometimes we don't use the dunya to teach us about deen. When somebody invites you to a place, and I'm guilty of this myself. But when somebody invites you to a place and they say, like, this is the dress code, it's black tie, or it's formal, what do you think about that? Somebody say, yo, this is the dress code, it's black tie, it's formal. What do you think about that? What does that suggest to you? That it's expensive, it's formal. What it suggests to me is that they recognize that our attire is a part of creating a certain environment, right? We're trying to create a certain environment here. And somehow being in sweats or being in denim, although I can't lie. I've attended a few black tie gatherings. I tried to do a tux with denim, I probably shouldn't have did it, but I've tried to do that, right? But my point, I thought it was cool. But I realized they recognize that all of this occasion suggests something about the environment that we're trying to create. If you really want your home place of prayer to be kind of like semi-consecrated as a place of prayer, then you have to have a certain kind of adab with it, right? You can't call it like a place of prayer and then we go in there and break dance in there. And it's not, then it loses that, it's more of a multi-purpose room. If it's like, it's a place of prayer and then we also put the weight bench in there and we doing free weights up in there, which is okay too, but it's more of a multi-purpose room, right? If it's going to be a place of prayer, there has to be a certain, like, I use this area for prayer and devotion, reading Quran. I don't use it for other things, right? I want it to be that, right? And there's a certain kind of, it should also be clean. It should be fragrant. One thing, that I think people understood in classical Muslim society that we don't understand as well as there's a connection between smell and experience. if you enter a place and it's foul smelling, it's very hard to, it's like, it was a foul smelling place. It just didn't, it just, you know, what you probably remember most about the place was the foul smell. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, it just didn't, right? When a place is pleasant smelling, it's just one less thing that is distracting you. It's like, I'm at ease. When a place is clean, it's one less thing that's distracting you, right? You know, I remember when Sheikh Muhammad Ali Yaqubi came to Egypt, and he entered the, a masjid, and he was teaching. He said, I don't mean to offend you. He said, I don't mean to offend anybody here. But the way that this masjid looks with dirt piled up in the corners and shoes thrown everywhere and books, sloppily, he said, we would never let our masajid look like this in Syria. We would never let our masajid look like this in Syria. Because we recognize there is a connection between to place and experience. There's a connection there, whether we like it or not. Right? There's a connection there. So if you're going to have a home place of prayer, be mindful of like how you engage the space, how the space looks, how the space feels. Right? And you grow in your appreciation for the place when you put some effort into its upkeep. Maybe, burning some oud in there. Maybe making sure the carpet is clean there. Maybe, not putting anything distracting, because nothing you want anything distracting, but something that suggests beauty or ease or reminds you of God. We don't take seriously enough the hadith, Inna Allaha Jamilun. God is beautiful. That's not a statement of like Yves Saint Laurent or something. That's a statement of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam. God is beautiful. وَيُحِبُّ الْجَمَالِ, and he loves beauty, right? It's the intention that you put into the space, right? And many of the women of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, they would make their i'tikaf in the last 10 days of Ramadan in their personal prayer areas in their homes. Like this is what, like I'm focused here. I'm only coming out for what is absolutely necessary, right? Take care of my children, but all of my free time, I'm in my personal prayer area right now. They would do that, right? This is an area of the home that's dedicated to devotion. It's dedicated to prayer. It's a good thing. It's a very, very good thing. In terms of like lining up, every act of devotion we do facing the Qibla, the direction of prayer, is more meritorious. We don't have to read the Quran in the direction of the Kaaba, of the sacred house in Mecca. We don't have to read the Quran facing that direction. But everything we do facing the Qibla there's more merit in it. There's more reward in it, right? Because it's just an added layer of mindfulness, right? You're present even on that level, that even as I'm reading from the Quran, I'm facing the direction of prayer, right? If I'm sitting and I'm remembering God, I'm facing the direction of prayer. So all of these things are beautiful things to do, in a personal kind of area of devotion in the house.
Not to get too technical, but let's say like the area is set up over here, and then we're not praying at the moment, we're just sitting down, and our feet are pointing in that direction. Is that okay, or should we align into that?
This is a very cultural thing. I attended when I was in school, and I was going to a Quran school, and most of the students were Indo-Pak. They were Desi. And I was just sitting once, and I had my feet just kind of reclining, and they said, "Dude, your feet are facing the Qibla." I was like, "Oh, is that wrong? Is that wrong?" And I was like, "Okay." Now they're facing the Quran. I said, "Oh." I folded my legs. That's better. I'm like, but I can't sit like this for a long time. I'm one of those people, I can't sit with my legs folded. I cannot sit like that. So I just remember like, man, that was kind of intense. So I started looking in the sources to see like, where does this come from? Is this, because when you're young, you're very rebellious. You're like, look, I'm not Daisy, okay? If it's not from the Quran and the Sunnah, I'm not doing that, all right? You gotta show me, where is it in the Quran and the Sunnah that I can't face my feet like this? And one of my teachers, he told me, he said, it's not in the Quran and the Sunnah. He said, it's not in the Quran. It's nowhere in the Quran or the Sunnah that you can't face it. But these are things we do to remind ourselves of the sacredness of those things. Is there something wrong with that? To remind ourselves of the sacredness of that direction of prayer. To remind ourselves of the sacredness of the Quran. We don't point our feet at it, right? We don't like to sit with our back toward it. Now, I can't tell you religiously that you have to do this, right? Because it's not from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But it is a way that we retain the ihtiram, or the respect for these symbols of Islam, right? And we're not saying they're religious obligations. We're not saying you have to, right? So I took that position. And whenever I could, I would respect those things, especially not to anger my teachers, anger my fellow students. And sometimes it was just crazy, right? But I was like, alhamdulillah, I'm one of the students here. So you couldn't raise your shoes above the Quran. So we walked through the madrasa. If you were carrying your shoes, you had to carry them like this. And I'll be thinking to myself, this is intense. You know what I'm saying? This is intense. This is intense, right? But I think it comes from a good place. I think it comes from a good place, as long as the person doing it is not under the impression that these are anything besides adab, etiquettes. If they think that these are acts of qurbah, acts of devotion, it could be a bid'ah. Could be an innovation. If they think like this is something that you have to do it, but as long as they know these are just manners. These are my manners. Right? These are my manners. These are my manners with the Quran, manners with the Qibla, etc. I've seen that too. I mean, I've seen a lot of things that you're just like, wow. You know what I'm saying? I've seen that too. People moving shoes, what else have I seen? People moving shoes. I've seen people that like if they accidentally mishandle the Quran, they have to take it and hit it all over their faces, and I'm just like, that's. I mean, people say like, kids. You're like, I saw one guy, he took like 30 minutes. I was like, it probably would be better if you just started reading from the Quran. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, but he dropped the Quran, he picked it up. I'm like, just recite Fatiha. You know what I'm saying? So I think these are all just different etiquettes, different manners. If someone were to ask my opinion about them, I would say, I would hope that it isn't so serious. I would hope that it isn't, I can imagine somebody Salafi. This is a bid'ah. I would hope that it isn't so serious. It's just, these are manners. These are expressions of love. Reading Quran or walking in front of someone praying. Now, this is the thing. A lot of people don't understand this. You should never walk in front of somebody praying. But the person praying, walking in front of them, it only extends about 3 rows. So if I'm praying here and Mashhood is there, he's not really walking in front of me, right? It's about where Adnan is. If I'm here, you should try to go around me. But after about 3 rows, it's not considered walking. So like think about like a typical masjid, a typical mosque, like 3 rows. After that, it's not considered walking in front of the person. At least in the Maliki schools, that's not in front. But before those 3 rows, you shouldn't walk in front of people that are praying. If someone is walking in front of you as you're praying, you should put your arm out and obstruct them. But it's even better than that to have a sutra, to have something that you place in front of you that, because if something is in front of you, a person can walk in front of that thing and then technically not walking in front of you, right? Yeah.
So one of the things that comes and we don't have to one first part you talk a little bit about this thing mercy and how
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Mercy. Mercy is very closely aligned with the idea of grace. You see, grace, mercy, these are not things, these are aspects of divinity that are not only effective after we've made mistakes. These are things that are present even when we're doing the right thing, we're falling short of the glory of God, right? God brought everything into existence out of his mercy, right? You know, well, he said his mercy wasa'at kulla shay. It encompasses everything. The Muslim, the person of another faith, the disbeliever, everything is enveloped by the mercy of God. And it's very hard for us to conceive of God's mercy because it's very hard for us to conceive of omnipotence. See, like, as human beings, we are bound by many things, right? We're bound by all kinds of like moral conventions. Like, even in situations where I think I have power, there's still reservation to use that power however I want to, right? Even if something is supposed to belong to me. Like, if I had my car and I intentionally crashed it into a wall, now in a sense I could do that because it belongs to me, but it would be wasteful. It still would be like, so even in the things that we have like al-milk tam, like complete ownership, we still don't have complete ownership, right? At the very least, we're bound by certain moral obligations, even just our conscience, our guilt, things like that. God has a milk tam of his creation. He can do whatever he wants to do, anything. And yet he chooses to provide for us. He chooses to be forbearing with our disobedience. He chooses to accept our weak and enfeebled worship. He chooses to accept our good deeds with all of their defects, right? God could destroy us if he wanted to, and it would be, and there is no one over him that could say, you know, you should have did that. Well, that wasn't nice. Or that wasn't al-milk tam. Those are my kids. Those are my kids. Those are my kids coming in. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. You want to teach the daughters? Okay, but right, God has complete ownership. I was just kidding, Jackson. I was just kidding, man. Okay, okay. He has complete ownership. So all of the good that we experience from God is from mercy, because he's not bound by anything to give us that good. God is so good to us, and he's not bound to be good to us. It is just the nature of his divinity to be good to us. That is mercy. You see, Ramadan is an expression of mercy, because God does not have to give us a time in which our deeds are worth more. God does not have to give us a promise of, a reward that the angels don't even know for our fasting. All of this is from mercy, right? Forgiveness is an aspect of divinity that becomes active after we commit sins. Meaning mercy is active even if we don't make any mistakes. Just in our being, God is showing us grace, right? Everything you do by the grace of God. How you do? By the grace of God. By the grace of God. everything by the grace of God. Forgiveness is that, man, there are some, like God is worthy of being obeyed. God should not be disobeyed, right? God is worthy of being feared, and yet we disobey him, right? In our human inclination to immediate something, pleasure or immediate gratification, we disobey God, right? Sometimes just our curiosity, sometimes our anxiety. Ibn Hazm, the great Spanish, Muslim scholar, he said, the defining characteristic of human beings is hala, is anxiety. We're anxious creatures. And then he says that when Allah says that human beings were born, they were born in a state of anxiety. He said, go back to the story of Adam. I found these tafsirs very deep. He said, Adam was in the Garden of Eden and everything was accessible to him. And how Satan misled him, he said, your Lord only told you not to touch this tree because if you did, you'd experience khulud, you'd become eternal. Many of the Mufassirun, they say before that, Adam had never even considered his temporality. He never considered like, wait, I'm not eternal? Like, you mean, and they said just the feeling that all of the beauty that he was experiencing could come to an end. Him and Hawa, they just started eating from the tree because they were anxious about what, this could end? No, this can't end. This can't end. Right? Because look at the Quran. Shaitan said what? Your Lord only forbade you from this tree because if you did, you become khalidun. You become people that were forever. And he said their anxiety got the best of them. And then look at the wisdom of God. The main feature of our human existence is what? Temporality. So every experience we have, we know it's just temporary. Sometimes that gets the best of us. Right? Got to do it, but what will happen if I don't? Right? I might miss my opportunity. I got to do this. Right? So we may disobey God because of that. We may disobey God because of curiosity, want to see something. Right? We're also knowledge accumulating creatures. And what will happen if I was in Virginia over the weekend, and Sheikh Abdul Rahman Murphy, he said that somebody should write a book called Now I Know. For all of the stuff that a person did that was haram and they found out, man, now I know. Now I know. It should be entitled, Now I Know, right? Sometimes we really want to see. So there's different reasons we obey God. We disobey God. All of them are illegitimate. All of them are illegitimate. And yet, God forgives us. God forgives us over and over again. The Prophet, peace be upon him, he said, God created us to forgive us. Just think about that, man. Ibn Ata'illah, looking at this statement, God created us to forgive us. He said, notice in the Quran, when God creates Adam and God speaks to the angels, he said what? Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa. I've placed in the earth a representative. In the earth. That God was revealing to the angels that the plan from the very beginning was for us to be right here. Wasn't like I've created, Inni ja'ilun fil adni khalifa. I've placed in the garden a khalifa. No, fil ard. Right? That making mistakes and being forgiven and having an earthly existence, this was in God's plan. This is exactly the way it was supposed to be. Right? So forgiveness is the fundamental core of our relationship with God. Because we are fundamentally flawed. We're always making mistakes. We're always doing wrong things. Right? And God is, Ghafoor. Ghafur, this is ismul sifatul mubalagha. God forgives over and over and over and over and over and over and never gets tired of forgiving. You know, one way that one can help to kind of like bring the asmat and the sifat, the asma and the sifat, excuse me, bring them to mind is thinking about yourself. Thinking about you, and you think that God is more, God is greater. For all of us, forgiveness, it weighs heavily on us. It's very difficult. It's like somebody wrongs me over and over and over and over. It'd be very hard to forgive them. That's easy for God. And as long as we believe in God and His oneness, and that we don't offer to Him we don't offer to anyone else that which is due to Him, that ibadah, God will forgive over and over and over and over and never tire of forgiving. Over and over and over. The Prophet said in the Sahih, if we came to God with an ocean's worth of sins, God would match that with an ocean's worth of forgiveness. That is the forgiveness of God, right? Which is, subhanAllah, you know, overwhelming really to think about it like that. Overwhelming to think, wow, this is God who knows every time I messed up, knows every time I'm going to mess up, and just if I'm sincere will forgive me. Knows my capacity, knows my capability, knows, man, he struggles with this, can see me for what I really am and still forgive me. You know, sometimes it brings me to tears when I think I can't hide anything from Allah. God created me. There's nothing I can hide from Allah. You know, we can hide things from people, even our spouses. And we can hide things from them. You know, we can't hide anything from God. And God still forgives us. SubhanAllah. He's Halim. He's forbearing. Right? So forgiveness, you know, mercy relates to our existence, and forgiveness relates to our flaws. Right? That's the way that I think about it. And God knows best. Other things. Yes.
Going back to what is the definition of actually passing away? Is it when is it physiological? And the reason I ask is a lot of times I see people
near-death experiences. I died and I came back. So
more like in the hospital, we'll see someone just living off a machine. Really, not being sort of, they're very close to that. Or for some instances, it's really not on the train, right? You take that away. We say the soul is already gone, and it's sort of.
Oh man, I don't know. That's a good. The thing is, this is why you should pay better attention in class. My second year at Azhar, our what's called Qadaya Fiqhiyya al-Mu'asira, contemporary fiqh issues. Every semester, we had a class in contemporary issues. And it was really maybe one of the best classes we had. One year we did the stock market. And I was impressed at how relevant the topics were. These were real stuff. We did the Borasa one year. One year we did Amal Tajmiliya. We did plastic surgery. Right? It was interesting to read about plastic surgery in Arabic and breast enhancements and all manner of things like that, and the Islamic rulings on things like that. One year we did euthanasia, right? Mercy killings and stuff like that. I don't remember anything I studied, man. Which is the sad thing. I'm thinking like, as you're talking, I'm like, wait, I did a whole module on euthanasia and mercy killing, but I don't remember I don't remember the rulings. What I do remember is that if a person is being kept alive by a ventilator, I believe shar'an they're dead. Right? That was just like a bottom line kind of ruling, but there was, we read at least 200 pages. And I don't remember a single thing. We just show you how old I'm getting.
Is there anything in our tradition about, how, I guess it sounds weird, but like how to die or how to die with dignity? I think a lot of times people are in a position or find themselves in a position where they'll want to just keep doing intervention, where it may not help the person, but
yeah, no, there's something,
like a lot of trauma, right, on the body. Just to keep them alive.
The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't talk about life like it was the thing to be pursued always at all costs. When someone had a terminal illness and was really in pain and they were really suffering, there was a woman, her husband was dying that way. And she asked the Prophet, what should she say? Should I want him to live or should I want him to die? Because he seems to be like in so much pain. And the Prophet said, pray to Allah that if death is better for him, to take his life. And if life is better for him, then to restore his health. And that is the prayer that you make in that, and you let Allah do what if death is better for him, then take his life. Right? In the state of Iman. Right? Because I think one of the wisdoms, and this is just me thinking, this isn't like, I'm not quoting a source. I think that if a person is not careful, too much exposure to that pain, that trauma, they can begin to have bad thoughts about Allah, right? Allah is torturing me. And Allah is, this is the manifestation of his name, El-Mudhil. He's lowering me, he's debasing me, right? He's destroying me, right? And you don't want to die with bad thoughts about Allah. You want to die with good thoughts about Allah, right? So, there's a lot in our tradition about how to die. And, I would go as far as to say the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad والسلام, is to accept the reality of death and to become comfortable with it, right? When Aisha was sitting with the Prophet والسلام, and he made it clear to her through insinuation that he was going to die soon, she started crying and she started saying, why? And he said, a servant has been given the choice of remaining here or being with his master. And he chose being with his master. Right? They say Sayyidina Bilal, when he was dying, they said that his wife was very distraught. Good people, of course, when they die, people around them are distraught. Like, what would we do without you? And she said that he was overjoyed. I'm going to be with my ahibba, Allah wa Rasuluh. I'm going to be with my beloved, Allah and his messenger. One of the most consistent things you see in a lot of the righteous in our tradition, those men and women, they were not afraid of death. They were not afraid of death. And when you're around people like that, they weren't afraid of death. They were concerned about judgment. They were concerned about hisab. But death itself, they weren't afraid of death. SubhanAllah. So, the Prophet ﷺ, I would say his teaching is not kind of this strange, morbid fascination with death, but accepting death as the terminus of life. And I'm very nervous right now. I'm very nervous. Last week, SubhanAllah, I teach at Iman on Thursdays at a transitional house. So men recently released from prison. And I do some mentorship over there. And the house coordinator, I always ask him, what do you want me to talk about? Because I'm here to serve you. Whatever problems you're having with the guys in the house or whatever, I'm just gonna come in and he was like, I want you to talk to them about taking advantage of life, appreciating life, and engaging life with urgency. Because he maybe felt like they were just kind of sitting around, just too complacent. So I started talking about life being precious and death being imminent, right? And at some point I said, death is like a doorway that we all have to pass through. But we don't know where we are in relation to that doorway. Some of us are right there on the doorstep. Some of us are right there at the threshold. Some of us 20 years away from it. Some of us 40. Some of us a week. So we don't know where we are in relation to that threshold, right? Everybody there, yeah, well, mashallah, mashallah, mashallah. I finished the daughters. A brother named Amin. He needed to go to 76th in Racine, and I needed somebody to drop me off at 55th in Lake Park because my kids were at Kumar. We sat in the car together, just talking. His brother named Rashid, dropped him off first. Man, we'll see you next week. I still remember asking him, I said, before you became Muslim, what was your affiliation? He said, I was a vice lord. So I said, Finball rolling. He said, yeah, rolling downhill. He said, man, my life became horrible when I joined the gang, right? And I remember my respect for him. I said, he doesn't romanticize his time before Islam. He said, yeah, it's rolling downhill. I get the call the next morning. I hear like people, like the voice on the line is like panicked. I'm like, Rashid, what's up? He said, he had a heart attack last night, he died. I said, subhanallah. I was talking about death being a doorway we're going to pass through threshold, and he really on the threshold as I was speaking to him. And I promised, as I was speaking, he wasn't giving me like extra serious eye contact. He just gave me one look of affirmation, like, subhanallah, subhanallah. He just said, subhanallah. 50 years old, not an old man, died that night. When I went back to the transitional house last week, Asi was with me. Everybody was paying attention to what I was saying. They were like, usually when I'm speaking, they're like this. Come on, chaplain. Come on, go ahead and finish the daras. Bismillah. This week, they're like this. I said, man, look, this is serious. So all of this death talk is making me nervous. You know what I'm saying? Making me nervous. Like, you're going to walk out. It's making me nervous, right? But the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad والسلام, does involve just an acceptance. Not like this strength, but an acceptance. This is real. This is going to happen. This is real. Prepare for it. Right? Prepare for it. This is real. This is real now. This isn't a joke. Right? This is real. And just a quick tip. I find that with Americans, if you begin your da'wah to them with God, da'wah means invitation to Islam. You're listening, asking questions. That's my boy. That's my boy. That's my boy. That's my boy. If you begin your invitation to Islam or talking about Islam with God, it's gonna be a lot of argument because God is the contentious topic. If you begin with mortality, that look, life is about choosing how we want to die. That's what life is about. Immediately you raise the conversation to like, this is beyond some kind of philosophical joking and playing around and progress and this is cool, that's cool. No, this is where we are now. We're thinking about how we want to die. I'm choosing Islam. What you choosing? Ooh. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. But I've noticed that when we start there, the conversation just becomes where we need it to be to talk now. Because if you think this is, it's like, because what can he say? It's like, I'm choosing Islam. I'm choosing free market capitalism. Okay, good luck with that. You know what I'm saying? This is what we're choosing how we want to die here, right? This is what we're doing. I'm choosing Islam. What are you choosing? I'm choosing, Bertrand Russell's philosophy. Good luck with that. Let me see how far that gets you. Good luck with that. I'm choosing Camus. Go. Hopefully it takes you far. Because this is what I'm choosing. And I just feel like it's hard to talk about faith when the conversation is not there. So if it's just like, these issues and just forget, okay, look, we're talking about how we're gonna die. This is how I'm choosing. This is how I want to go out. How you want to go out. I was thinking about going out on Joe Rogan's Minhaj. Okay. Go ahead. If that's how you feel. And I've had them say to me, hey, look, man, you're making the conversation too serious. Well, it's serious. This is what this is the choice we're making in life. How do you want to die? I want to die committed to science and inquiry. You've chosen. That's your deen. This is my deen. Okay. But when you say that, they don't think that you're crazy. See, they think, okay, you're making a choice. Yes, sir. Alhamdulillah, as you should, my dear. As you should, my dear. May Allah enable you to die as a Muslim in a state of Islam, and all of us, inshallah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. By the passage of time, all human beings are in a state of loss, except for those who believe and do good deeds and join together in the teaching of truth and patience. Glory be to God, the Lord that is beyond description. And the last thing we pray is all praise is due to God, the Lord of the